Hi, Lise. Hi, Natalie.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Oh,
We will begin in a minute.
I hope some more friends join.
Mm-hmm.
Where's everybody today?
Oh,
Oh,
hi, Sarah's joining.
here you go.
Yeah, I was about to ask if, people were having a hard time logging in.
I didn't, but some more.
Okay. Okay. Hi, Mushki.
hi.
So I'm happy people are joining because this chapter is a pretty fundamental one. Okay, I'm just going to mute everybody and then we will begin. Okay. Just let me see this over here. Okay. Good morning, everyone. We are doing a chapter today, which truthfully, like I always remind everyone, all the chapters that we learn over here in the Tanya class are really summaries of the chapter. This is a very long chapter today, chapter 41. It is also a very fundamental chapter, which the Rebbe has actually recommended to people to learn, if not the entire chapter by heart, but especially the beginning. It is a segula for anger, says the Rebbe. So a lot of people, my son was recently here and he brought me one of their hair publications, and they actually made like this little card with the beginning of this chapter that a person can actually carry around with them in their wallet. And I have seen it before. It is the foundation of our avodah. That is what this chapter is all about. The Alter Rebbe will explain why that is. Um, as I said, it's a long chapter and very fundamental. And let's go. Okay, so up until now in Tanya, especially the recent chapters, the discussion has been about the wings of the mitzvah, meaning the kavana behind the mitzvah, the intention of the mitzvah, being the wings of the mitzvah, enabling the mitzvah to rise to the proper place depending on the type of avodah. And we did say that the wings of the mitzvah are love and fear of Hashem, right? But mainly, truthfully, in Tanya, we have been discussing love of Hashem. Usually what happens is that love of Hashem is the motivation to perform the positive commandments. In other words, because you love Hashem, you now perform the mitzvahs. And fear of Hashem is seen to be a deterrent for not transgressing the negative commandments. In other words, you fear Hashem and therefore you won't do all the 365 negative commandments which are in the Torah. Now, this chapter begins the discussion of the fear of God, Yiras Hashem, being the cornerstone of Avodah, even behind positive mitzvahs. In other words, it's not enough only to perform positive mitzvahs on the basis of love, but that you also need, even for positive mitzvahs, the ingredient of fear of Hashem. And the Alter Rebbe goes so far as to call it Ikar v'sharsha ha'avodah, the root and the foundation of all of your service of God. Now, most people, and it's become very popular actually, to love Hashem, right? The whole thank you Hashem movement, the whole bitachon movement, all derives from the love that we have for Hashem, right? And nothing wrong with that at all. But most people will actually will go so far to say that love is a higher and more sophisticated way of serving Hashem than fear. Because fear, what are you fearing? Are you fearing punishment? What exactly is the fear, right? And we're going to learn that there are different types of fear of Hashem. But love is more, palatable. It shows closeness and warmth and connectedness with Hashem. So that's why it seems like it's a higher level of serving Hashem. But the truth is that love is a very interesting emotion. Love is an emotion, it's a mixture of selfish and selfless. Because anytime you love someone, you do gain something. In other words, love is not entirely selfless. You gain something from the relationship when you love a person, when you love Hashem, even. Love, it is true that love energizes the mitzvahs that we perform, right? But love is considered to be the building and not the foundation. We need to have a foundation to enable that relationship with Hashem to remain strong and firm. What makes you do a mitzvah even if you don't feel like it? If you got up that morning and you're not particularly in love with Hashem that particular moment, right? What then propels you to do the mitzvah? It's yira. So we see already that love lacks a component of bittul, lacks a component of being selfless. It's a little bit selfish because it's like when you feel the love, it's easy to do the mitzvah. But what happens when you don't feel the love, right? Um, because when you don't feel like it, you're actually serving yourself. But when you do the mitzvah anyways, you end up serving Hashem and not yourself. So Yiras Hashem, or in the context of this chapter, Kabbalah's oil, which is accepting upon oneself the yoke of heaven, right, is less egoistic because it is all about Hashem and not about ourselves. So obviously there are different levels and there are different expressions of fear of Hashem. And the very, very basic level, which the Alter Rebbe tells us to arouse, is the natural fear of Hashem. So, right in chapter 18, way back when, we spoke about the natural love that every Jew has as an inheritance from our patriarchs. But here the Alter Rebbe says, and it's taken him 41 chapters to say so, we actually also have a natural fear, awe, and reverence of Hashem as well, hidden in the heart of every Jew. And that causes us not to rebel against Hashem, who is the King of Kings, Hashem, Malchi, Melech HaMelachim. And the point is that we have to arouse, first and foremost, this natural love if we are not able to produce a full-fledged emotion. So just the same as love. Love of Hashem, the ideal is to use your intellect to produce a full-fledged emotional love of Hashem. And if not, then at least it should be in your mind. And if not, it should be in a natural love that has been revealed. So even if a person doesn't have enough knowledge to contemplate the greatness of Hashem, because we're going to see that in order to actually produce this love of Hashem, we have to contemplate. The Tanya actually gives us a very practical meditation, which we're going to go into in a few minutes. But even if a person doesn't have enough knowledge to contemplate the greatness of Hashem to such a degree that it produces yira, right? The intellect producing the emotion, it's at least necessary to arouse and reveal the fear which every Jew has by nature. So you either have to awaken this yira so that it is revealed in your heart, which when it becomes a full-fledged emotion, that is the ideal, or at the very least in your mind, which the Alter Rebbe reminds us that the mind is in our control. In other words, the heart, what goes on in the heart is not really within our control, but the mind is. So even if you're not able to fully produce an emotion in the heart, you are able to produce this conviction in the mind. How do we do this? That is the question, right? If this is so basic and the foundation and the root of our avodah, how do we actually do this? So we reflect upon the greatness of Hashem in our thoughts, even if it is a superficial reflection. Wow. The Alter Rebbe says it's okay to reflect superficially and not contemplate deeply, although contemplating deeply would be the ideal. So here's the difference, right? We are both children of Hashem and servants of Hashem. A servant serves his master out of fear, not out of love. A son serves his father out of love. And we are required to have both elements. Otherwise, it is actually not considered serving Hashem. So that's why we see that fear is also very necessary. So how do we arouse this hidden fear? By contemplation. Because hidden fear is not usually felt. Why do we actually have to contemplate? It's like, because it's very similar to love. If you remember, we spoke about a Jew who's very, very far from Yiddishkeit, who has a very superficial knowledge of Yiddishkeit, perhaps, and nonetheless, when pushed to the corner, when asked to negate godliness, he will have self-sacrifice and be willing to die, right? That's because everything became very clear to him at that moment. When things are not clear, then that love and fear is hidden and it's not revealed. But we contemplate in order to bring it to clarity, because it's not usually by clarity. It's not usually clear. But if we're intentional about it and we contemplate, then we can bring some clarity to ourselves about this fear, and we actually arouse this hidden fear. It's not a time of crisis. You're afraid of a lion because it's very, very powerful, but there's no lion standing in front of you right now, and therefore contemplation is needed. So Yiras Hashem is actually acquired in two phases. Phase number one is the acceptance of Hashem's authority. It's as basic as that, even if you don't feel it in your heart. This is what is known as Kabbalas Ol. You're doing mitzvahs because you have to, not because you want to. And this is the authority of Hashem. Yes, we tend to think that it's nice and warm and fuzzy to do mitzvahs because we want to, but then what happens when there's a mitzvah that we don't want to do? That's when Yiras Hashem and Kabbalas Ol come in. And I do want to say that this past Shabbos, I give a Parsha share, and there was a Sikha of the Rebbe about Parshas Ekev, referring to the mitzvahs which we tend to like step on with our heel. Ekev is also translated as a heel. And the Rebbe speaks so beautifully, because sometimes we think that when we do these mitzvahs and we're not really in the mood and they're kind of like not important, we kind of feel that something's lacking. And in actual fact, the beauty is that when you do a mitzvah only with Kabbalas Ol and not because you want to, it is the purest form of attachment to Hashem, because it's all about Hashem. It's not you. So let's say you're just not in the mood of davening that day, but you force yourself to say the words because you have Kabbalas Ol and you have to daven, not because you want to daven. Wow. I always used to think that, oh, my davening wasn't really that good. Could have been more kavana. I should have been feeling more connected to Hashem. But then that's me. That's not Hashem. But in this case, when we do it all for Hashem because we have to, not because we want to, it really reaches a very high level of bittul and connection and closeness with Hashem. That's the first stage, acceptance of Hashem's authority. The second stage is when you begin to internalize this acceptance so that it reaches your mind and heart. So the internalization is the das part of the intellect. The first part is Chachma Bina. You understand that there's a God, and you understand that Hashem is great, and you understand that you have to do the mitzvahs. But das is when it actually becomes a part of you, and it reaches your mind and then your heart. Both phases are necessary, but now here comes the practical part. Tanya starts off with a meditation for you to accept Hashem's authority. And this is like the wow factor in this chapter. The Alter Rebbe says we have to meditate upon four things. That's how he breaks it down. The first thing that a Jew has to meditate upon in order to arouse this fear of Hashem is the awesomeness of Hashem's power and strength. Your fear is proportionate to the amount of power that is facing you. If a little bird stands in front of you, you're not so scared. But if a lion stands in front of you, you're really very fearful. So more power you reflect upon in Hashem, the more you fear him. You meditate on the greatness of Hashem and his kingdom, that Hashem rules and takes care of everything. And his kingdom includes all the worlds, Elyonim v'Tachtonim. There are worlds that we don't see. The four spiritual worlds, we don't see all of them. We are only in the world of Asiya. But this is step number one, to reflect upon and contemplate Hashem's awesomeness and Hashem's power. The second thing that we have to meditate upon is Hashem's energizing presence in this world. So Hashem is great, and at the same time, Hashem also gives energy and is greater than all the worlds and transcends all the worlds in a way of Soivev Kol Almin and Mamale Kol Almin. As we say in Tehillim, Haloi es hashamayim ve'es ha'aretz ani mole. So Hashem is entirely, the world is full of Hashem, and Hashem is also higher than the worlds. So number one and number two is awesomeness and power of Hashem. Number two is his energizing presence in the world. That Hashem is greater than the worlds. And yet, and this is when we come to number three. Number three is that notwithstanding Hashem's greatness, notwithstanding Hashem's power, Hashem has chosen to have a personal relationship with Bnei Israel. He identifies with Bnei Israel. He puts everything else to the side, all the great spiritual worlds, all the angels, and he identifies with the nation of Israel and the individual Jew. And what do we do in turn? The Jew in turn accepts Hashem as king. Hashem is only king because we accept him. So it's our response to this choice of Hashem. And we do his will, therefore, as a servant to his master, knowing that he has chosen us. But, and this is number four, and the most special part of this meditation, not only has Hashem chosen to identify with the nation of Israel, but Hashem has an unwavering interest in you, the individual. And this concept is actually one of the 12 psukim that the Rebbe has established that we teach children, which are a foundation of Avodas Hashem. It is the 6th of the 12 psukim, which is V'hinei Hashem, Nitzav Olav, U'meloi kol ha'aretz kavoidai, U'mabit Olav, U'voichen kloyes v'leiv, Im avdei karoi. That Hashem stands upon you and fills his world with all his glory, and yet looks at you and sees all your feelings and emotions and sees if you are serving Hashem correctly. When one contemplates this on this concept, we would therefore realize that we should have both love and fear as a servant stands before the king. These are 4 points in order to arouse this feeling of primarily awe of Hashem. So it's not that complicated. And in fact, the Alter Rebbe says you do not have to contemplate deeply, and you do not have to reach for the stars and attain perfection, because we know that the Yetzer Hara always tells us, you're not going to reach that level anyway, so don't even think about anything anyways. It's okay to contemplate this on a superficial level. Because the Alter Rebbe says it does not mean that you understand all of this, nor does it mean that you think deeply about it. But when you consider these simple facts, that Hashem fills and surrounds the worlds, and yet chooses to identify as the God of Israel, and singles out the individual Jew to have a relationship with him. We have a personal relationship with Hashem, even though Hashem is awesome and mighty and powerful and fills all the worlds. This brings about enough fear and awe with which to do the mitzvahs. Because here's the thing, once a person has contemplated all of these concepts, right? Number one, awesomeness and power of Hashem. Number two, the energizing power of Hashem. Number three, Hashem has chosen to identify with the nation of Israel. And number four, he has an individual relationship with you. Once you've contemplated all of this, arousing fear, and you've caused a behavior change, meaning you have caused yourself to perform the mitzvahs. So here we see how it's also a necessary ingredient to perform the positive mitzvahs, those mitzvahs that you just don't feel like doing, right? What you are doing is you are revealing Hashem's will in this world without concealment or limitation. Now, what does that even mean? Hashem's will is Torah mitzvahs. But what do we mean by revealing Hashem's will? So fear is not actually a motivation to get closer to Hashem. It is a deterrent from doing the wrong thing. But what you are actually doing at the time of arousing this fear on a practical basis is you are using your faculties of Chachma, Bina, and Das to think about Hashem. So at the same time as you are thinking about Hashem, you're not thinking unholy thoughts. So you are involved in a world of holiness. And even if you don't produce a full-fledged emotion of fear, it's only in the mind, it's still considered authentic Avodah and enough for you to reveal godliness and the will of Hashem in this world because of the true nature of a Jew. The true nature of a Jew is not to rebel against Hashem. It is hidden by layers and layers of Yetzer Hara and Klippa and temptations and the world around us, etc. But our true nature is not to rebel against Hashem. And therefore, this fear, if it's enough to change behavior, it aligns you with your true nature as well. And the reason that this is an ingredient also in positive mitzvahs is because we are commanded to serve Hashem, which cannot be done if you only love Hashem. It's not considered serving Hashem. It's considered doing something great. You're loving Hashem because this fear, in actual fact, not only will it cause you to serve Hashem, but it is also going to reveal a truer love of Hashem, not an egoistic love of Hashem, an altruistic love of Hashem, by revealing Hashem's will and godliness. We bring more of Hashem's will into this world. We reveal more Elikus in this world. We bring it into this world. And not only do we bring it into our own lives, we bring it down to this world for everybody, for all the neshamas that are in this world, and we achieve a unity between Hashem and his Shekhinah, and that is what is meant by revealing Hashem's will. When we say that we reveal Hashem's will, I'm sure all of you have heard the expression of an Eis Ratzon. An Eis Ratzon is when we do a mitzvah and we call an Eis Ratzon an auspicious time, but that's not the literal translation of the words Eis Ratzon. Eis Ratzon means the time of his will. In other words, we are revealing Hashem's will at this moment in time. And how does that actually occur? When we achieve a unity amongst the spheres of Hashem, the attributes of Hashem. So certain spheres are in contradiction to each other. For example, chesed, kindness, is in contradiction to gvura. But when we do the mitzvahs with love and fear, both of them, we actually achieve a unity between these spheres, which is why we say in davening, and certain people even have a custom to say this before certain mitzvahs, we say, L'shem yichud kudsha brichu, for the sake of the unity of Hashem and his Shekhinah. And then we continue this phrase. How do we end this phrase? B'shem kol Yisrael, in the name of all of Israel. So actually, it's so powerful when we do a mitzvah with both love and fear as a foundation that we reveal the state of the unity in the attributes of Hashem, and we achieve a revealed light of Hashem for all of Bnei Israel. So what happens, like logically, what's the sequence? We contemplate on those 4 steps in order to arouse a fear of Hashem. When we arouse this fear of Hashem, we reveal Hashem's will upon us and upon the entire world. And then what happens is that this gives immense pleasure to Hashem, which is actually the highest form of love, to give pleasure to Hashem. Not to give pleasure to us, to give pleasure to Hashem. Just like a son who loves his parents more than himself will go beyond all limitations to do whatever it takes to give his parents pleasure. And all this comes towards the end of the chapter where the Alter Rebbe says, How is this love, this great, truer form of love, as a result of fear, expressed? This is expressed by the concept of Mesiras Nefesh, self-sacrifice. But in this case, self-sacrifice does not mean dying for the sake of doing a mitzvah, but actually living for the sake of doing the mitzvah. And how do we know this? We actually start every day our davening with a declaration of Mesiras Nefesh in the way of living with a mitzvah. So what does this mean? In the morning, one of our morning prayers after Moedani, part of the morning brachas, we say Elokai, Elokai, Neshama Shanasata Bi Tahirahi. Hashem, you have given me a neshama that is pure. Ata varasa, ata nafachta bi, ata yatzarta, you created it, you blew it into me, etc., etc. But then what do we say to Hashem? We know that life is temporary and that eventually, after 120 years, we will die if Mashiach hasn't come, chas v'sholom. But we don't want to wait to die to give up our lives to Hashem. We say to Hashem, Va'ata asid litla mimeni, you will take it away from me in the future. But we say to Hashem, we're not waiting for that. We are committing ourselves today. We are giving you our souls. We are delivering our neshamas to you. Life is temporary, and then the neshama reunites with its source, but we don't have to wait for that to happen, for the neshama to reunite with its source. We can have Mesiras Nefesh in a way that we live the concepts of Hashem's will now. We don't have to die. We deliver our souls to Hashem now. And that's why right after the tefillah of Elokai Neshama Shnasata Bi, we start actually saying the brachas in a way of a very intimate connection with Hashem. We say, Baruch Atah Hashem, blessed are you. We speak intimately, in an intimate manner to Hashem. This is also mentioned in Tehillim, where we say, Elecha Hashem Nafshi Esa. I lift my soul to you, Hashem. Now, I don't do it when I'm going to chas v'shalom pass away. I'm lifting my soul to you now. This soul that you gave me, Hashem, I am basing all my avodah on the foundation of Kabbalah's Oil and Yiras Hashem. And later on in Tanya, first of all, in the next chapter, the Rebbe goes into more detail. Later on in Tanya, the Rebbe speaks about different levels of Yira as well. But the foundation and shirish of our avodah is this fear of Hashem, which actually is so altruistic that it is the highest form of love. We do arouse it by contemplating on the things that the Alter Rebbe suggests, and we then live our entire lives aligned with the value of Mesiras Nefesh, but without dying and instead living. So this was a summary of the chapter. If you want to know more, I suggest you go and read the chapter. It's a long chapter, but I have tried my best to take the main points and to summarize it. If anyone has any questions or observations. Okay, everybody's quiet today. Okay, so if no one has anything to say, we will end the class now, and Mirz Hashem, we will continue this topic next week.